You might have noticed with the protests in Cuba, the very second that the protests began, there was like a massive social media bot spam campaign all ready and raring to go. Like, they were sitting there lying in wait to press the fucking button to get the bots to tweet a million fucking times and get the SOS Cuba hashtag going and stuff. If you want to know why that happened, it's something that's pretty obvious. If you live in Latin America and you pay attention to social media, especially Twitter and Facebook at all, you will have noticed this already. What happens in these countries is like whenever there is like any sort of like, right-wing, social media talking point, it gets immediately backed up by 50,000 fucking bots with like name bunch of numbers on Twitter, fake Facebook accounts, whatever, spamming whatever their preferred hashtag is. Like every single time there's any sort of thing that like a government that is perceived to be left-wing or against the right-wing does in Latin America, very quickly the hashtag gets trending immediately. A bunch of bots spam it with the same shit. It happens all the time. If you're from Colombia, Peru, Argentina, whatever, use Twitter, you've noticed it. It's very obvious. Basically like a bunch of template accounts just spam the hashtag, spam the same sort of posts. The sort of thing that's happening in Cuba with the SOS Cuba hashtag is merely that being applied to a wider geopolitical campaign, and in English as well. And this isn't new. It happened with Bolivia in 2019, also with Mexico, and with Venezuela as well in that same year. And you might ask, why is this happening? Is it the CIA or whatever? I mean, obviously, it wouldn't be surprising if the US had some sort of involvement, at least through indirect funding, but these campaigns are very clearly run by rich local elites in Latin America. Well, they're not run by them, but they're paid for by them because they're run by PR firms. And the reason why I'm saying that is because these campaigns are usually spread by first the bots start tweeting and then they're picked up on by people who work for generally like libertarian think tanks, like right-wing advocacy groups, which are very big in Latin America. Like, honestly, the think tank industry in Latin America is bigger than it is in the US now. The US think tanks are more like based on proposing policy. The Latin American think tanks are more purely based on propaganda. The shittiest, cheapest right-wing propaganda you could imagine. That's what the Latin American think tanks are for. They're basically like a Ben Shapiro factory. Their role is to recruit a bunch of 18-year-olds, have them work an internship there, and then 3 years later, suddenly they have all the right-wing talking points memorized, and they seem like they're an enlightened intellectual while telling you that Venezuela, the drill. Great example is the Bolivia coup, which this is a Washington Post article from last September. So a Washington firm ran fake Facebook accounts in Venezuela, Bolivia, and Mexico. The firm called CLS Strategies, based in Washington, D.C., they were chastised by Facebook for using fake accounts, including on Instagram, to secretly manipulate politics in other countries in violation of Facebook's prohibition on foreign interference. I didn't know Facebook had that, but it sounds like bullshit to me. Sounds like something they introduced to appease Russiagators in the USA very recently, but whatever. CLS Strategies said Friday that it had launched an internal investigation in conjunction with an outside law firm and put the head of its Latin American practice on administrative leave. Well, I mean, obviously whatever that offense is here, it's bullshit because this is like a PR consultancy that runs fake bot social media campaigns. Obviously, they're not like a legitimate company running like a regular sort of consultancy. They literally exist to be like a troll farm that you can contract, and they'll do whatever you want them to. Importantly, our past client work in Latin America, including opposition to oppressive regimes, hilarious, was not conducted on behalf of foreign entities. The work was funded and directed by clients inside each country. I mean, if that's true, which it wouldn't really surprise me, obviously, it's a right-wing, it would be a right-wing, bourgeoisie smear campaign from these countries, which is what I think it is. So they had spent $3.6 million in advertising across 3 countries. And that's just on advertising, right? Not even counting what it costs them to hire employees to run the pages. Because when I say bots, a lot of these accounts are bots, but also a lot of them are clearly being run by individuals, probably like minimum wage employees who were being paid to manage like 10 accounts at once and reply to people to give off the impression of like a real person. And often they make the accounts themselves, but often they also buy accounts from real people to try and make them look real. Like, that's why you get like accounts that don't tweet for like 5 months and then suddenly they show up tweeting about SOS Cuba military intervention now. And apparently CLS Strategies had professional ties to opposition political leaders in Venezuela. So the office of Áñez in Bolivia confirmed that CLS Strategies was contracted in December 2019 to carry out lobbying in support of Bolivian democracy and in support of holding new presidential elections. The Bolivian right-wing coup dictatorship admitted straight up that they had contracted this firm to do this. This is also linked to the Twitter campaign, the SOS Bolivia hashtag, etc. The OAS IACHR, which is the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights, noted in their report on Bolivia that since the resignation of former President Evo Morales, false Twitter accounts have been used as part of the campaign to support the president of the civic community of Santa Cruz and the government led by Janine Áñez. The data shows that 68,000 accounts were created, which tweeted 14 hashtags that were then retweeted by 250,000 different accounts, reaching a total of 1 million tweets. Like, Free Democratic Bolivia, there's no Q in Bolivia, Evo is fraud, Bolivia Unida. This is what I mean, right? This was probably a CLS Strategies campaign as well, because the only reason that we know about the Facebook and Instagram campaign about CLS Strategies is because Facebook revealed it themselves. I don't think Twitter really does that very often, and they definitely wouldn't do it if it was in favor of if it was against US foreign policy, right? So when we look at the current new operation in Cuba that's going on, it has all the same hallmarks as the operation that was carried out back then in Bolivia. The data researcher who posted this, how do I click on the tweet? There we go. He said that a bunch of accounts in Spain suddenly started tweeting, right? So on the 5th of July, which is long before the protest started, right? Suddenly, this account starts tweeting 5 times per second with the hashtag SOS Cuba, right? Just responding to literally everything that it possibly could with the hashtag SOS Cuba. Like, look at the time on these tweets. Like, absolutely ludicrous stuff. Presumably, a bunch of, as he says, like a bunch of other accounts started doing the same thing, started retweeting these same tweets, etc., until they were trending first in Spain, and then they were picked up in the rest of the world with celebrities tweeting them, etc. As you can see in the graphic that he made, who is by far the biggest disseminator of these tweets? Who is it? Who is Agus Antonetti? Let's find out. So, he is by far the biggest, the one who like retweeted this stuff and got it the most dissemination by far. Like, basically half of this is him. And he works for the right-wing libertarian think tank, Fundación Libertad. Like I said, pretty clearly this is an operation that is being run by, being paid for by the Latin American right wing through these millionaire funded think tanks that, as I said, are basically just massive propaganda apparatuses. Don't even really try to propose policy. Their entire thing is just to spread right wing propaganda. So wow, what a coincidence! This fucking right wing guy, employee of this right wing think tank, just happens to be like the biggest guy to pick up on these completely bullshit on this SOS Cuba hashtag. Wow, can't fucking believe that happened, man. Crazy. These think tanks are mostly run from Argentina and Spain. Don't ask me why they run from Argentina, but Spain is obvious because it's just the richest Spanish-speaking country. And guess where the data researcher says that this campaign began? Spain. Ooh, what a surprise. Wow. So if I was to guess what happened here, I would say that after CLS Strategies was kind of, compromised through the Facebook sort of fucking them over by revealing them as being behind a bunch of campaigns in other Latin American countries, they might have decided to set up their own sort of PR firm in Spain to carry out similar operations, or they might have just contracted one that already exists in Spain to do it for them to mimic the same sort of campaign. And that's pretty much seems to me what's happening here. That this is a massive like social media disinformation campaign being run by a massive network of right-wing Latin American think tanks that most people outside of Latin America who aren't really clued into this sort of thing couldn't really comprehend. It's insane. The massively disproportionate attention that this got has been in big part due to these disinformation campaigns being run by these think tanks. And it's not going to stop. It happens in local politics here all the fucking time. The smallest fucking thing. Like recently, like just a couple of days ago, there's this story in Argentina about like the government buying sex education kits with like a fucking wooden dildo with condoms, right? To distribute to like healthcare facilities around the country so that, nurses can teach people how to put a fucking condom on. And somehow this has become a big scandal, like the wooden penis scandal. Like literally the most normal fucking thing you could ever imagine in any country with sex education. And these like bot accounts have amplified it to the point that it's become like a massive talking point of the right wing now. And those campaigns are run by the same people who are sitting there ready to just run these international campaigns at any fucking moment when any sort of little thing happens to try and amplify them and make them seem much worse and like much more of a big deal than they really are. So if you want my opinion here on who's running those campaigns, and I think mine is probably the most accurate because, to be honest, most of you who are covering this don't seem to have this sort of insight. And they're just like, who's running these campaigns? We don't know, but it must be the CIA. I mean, there's probably there's almost certainly some sort of indirect US funding at least involved in this chain, but the primary actors here are these sort of local advocacy groups, like propaganda outlets trying to produce the new Ben Shapiro.
Praise
like
be
a Ben
to
Shapiro
Allah.
factory. Like them, and also the governments themselves, in some cases, like that in Bolivia, for example, and the opposition groups themselves. Like I'm sure Juan Guaido has spent a lot of the money that the US has given him on consultancy, PR campaigns and stuff. What's going on here? It's going to keep happening. Obviously, Twitter and Facebook, etc., are not motivated to stop something that supports the US foreign policy line. So it's going to keep happening. They're going to keep doing it. Another thing is like these accounts started spreading the idea that is honestly kind of funny. Like that like the protests had basically won a civil war and like liberated an entire city. Great example of how this bot campaign works. Now, I don't know, is this guy a bot? Yeah, he's almost certainly a bot. Yep, absolutely. Mexican, López Obrador is the worst president in the world in his bio. Cuba is a dictatorship, follows 23,000 accounts, 29,000 followers, typical like follow for follow Twitter account that just spams right-wing shit like literally 1,000 times per day. Normal stuff. So let's do some investigation here into these pictures. He says, historic, the province of Camagüey has been liberated from the Cuban regime by the protesters, supposedly. Supposedly, these are some images that the protesters have taken after liberating Camagüey. Okay, so take this image and let's put it into Google. This one is from April. This photo is actually from an anti-embargo protest from April. See? From Agencia F. 2021, and this is an image from an anti-embargo protest in April 2021, okay? What about the other images? People gathered in front of a plaza with FEU, that is like the student union of the University of Camagüey, okay? Lots of Cuban flags, lots of people in red shirts. Okay, well, let's see if we can find the account for the local government of Camagüey. I know it's there. Now let's take a look through their tweets from a couple of days ago. Does that building look familiar to you? Does that building look familiar to this other image over here, where someone is addressing the crowd, right? Doesn't that building look kind of familiar? But this is from a different day, right? This post is from July 13th. So maybe it's true. Maybe the people did take the town square and then the government took it back and now they're taking photos of it for 4 days later. Well, let's go back to July the 13th then. Here's a picture from July the 12th. Do you see the balcony that this guy is on? Doesn't that look like this balcony literally exactly? This is a pro-government demonstration in the name of of medical students of Camagüey. The president of the student union speaks. He's giving a speech, is the caption here. From July 12th, he's talking from the balcony. Who is he talking to? These fucking people from this image. It's a pro-government protest. You can clearly see it's the same building, same balcony. It's a picture from a pro-government protest posted a day later. You can see the view from the balcony in this photo. That's why there's a bunch of people in red shirts. There's so many Cuban flags. It's a pro-government protest, okay? So yeah, massive sort of bot disinformation. This tweet got 3,000 or 2,000 likes, 800 retweets, probably seen by like 1 million fucking people, saying that Camagüey was taken by the protesters and that the police and the military were joining them, and so many fucking dipshits just believing it uncritically. Most of them bots, obviously. Like, look at the name, look at the name, look at the names, look at the names. Perfect example. Name numbers, name numbers, name numbers. You know, just like random account from Spain, Nuevo Leon, anti-populist, blah, blah, blah. Name numbers, name numbers, name numbers, name numbers, name numbers. You see what I fucking mean here? Name numbers, name numbers, name numbers. This is what it looks like. This is what the thing I was talking about looks like. Another reason that I forgot to mention is why Spain is such a center for this sort of thing, these sorts of think tank sort of thing, is because of Vox in Spain, which is like a fairly big right-wing party, like fairly big like far-right party, who have a lot of resources and who are like basically like the envy of a lot of right-wingers in Latin America. So yeah, that's what these campaigns look like. If you ever see like an SOS hashtag, it's bullshit, okay? It's pretty much always bullshit. Now, I'm not saying that the protests in Cuba were bullshit. I'm sure, you know, people in Cuba obviously have legitimate reasons to protest, but a reason why they grew is obviously due to the social media campaign, and the reason why the coverage of them was so prominent, why they were covering social media everywhere, why they were being like disproportionately covered while protests in Colombia that are you know, being repressed to an absurd degree, like 100 times more. The reason you're hearing about Cuba so much and not so much about Colombia is because of these campaigns, both due to the natural media bias, the bias of foreign governments, and also these massive social media campaigns that are getting your moronic liberal friends to like suddenly pretend to care about Cuba and tweet like SOS Cuba infographics, okay? Remember it. This is what you're seeing. Anytime you see this, this is what you've been seeing. Remember it, okay?